Okay. Hopefully this works.
Chainsaw again.
Oh, can I put my little
What?
thought into it?
Oh my god. I don't know if that was a troll or a child, but
Was that like
It was a child. I just looked at their profile. They were definitely a child.
I think so, Dermy.
That sounds like the youngest person I've ever seen come up on here.
I know.
Jeez. Like, did you just learn to talk? Just learn to talk already on TikTok Live.
We'll see.
Yeah, there is a 18 requirement. It's not just a requirement to know how to talk, unfortunately.
We'll see if I get in. Ooh,
Can I just?
That was actually like a really good.
Thanks.
You sounded just like I was like, did they come back up somehow?
Hi, friends.
I know.
It was
Hello?
me.
Hello.
Hi, how old are you?
I am 38 long years old.
Perfect.
Born in
What's
85.
up? What's your take?
I think the spanking is abuse thing is kind of, I don't think it's abuse. I think that it's a tool, not one that people should necessarily pursue, but it is an effective tool to help curb behavior, and not even to say that it should be used initially. I am totally
effective based on what?
Well, I mean, the idea is that if your kids don't learn from you, they'll learn from society, and in a much more more brutal way.
How is no? How is spanking specifically effective?
Because it creates a pretty extreme, I guess, stimuli for the child after they do something they're not supposed to do. So the
Sure,
sharp.
So you just described to me how we form trauma. But can you describe to me how?
Nope, not everyone forms trauma the same way.
Sure, but a lot of people do form trauma that way.
But not everyone,
So
right?
Can you please explain to me? Can you please explain to me how it's effective, or based on what it is effective?
Well, because if I go and I touch a stove that's hot, it's very likely that I won't do it again, because I realize that the hot stove, the effect of touching a hot stove is pain. So in the same way that if I continually disobey my family or my parents or something, and then or I do something very bad, maybe I hurt my sibling, the effect of that is that my mother or father will come give me a spanking.
So why is it then when you get burnt by a stove, why is it that you wouldn't touch it again?
Well, because it's painful.
Right. So
you want to avoid pain,
right?
What's that?
Right, because you don't want to get hurt. You're afraid of it.
Right. Well, I guess so. I mean, I don't know if it's a fear. Like I don't fear a stove. Does anyone? I don't think anyone fears a stove.
You fear touching the stove because you fear touching the stove because you don't want to get burnt.
Right. You learn cause and effect. It's not fear. You learn cause and effect.
No.
Yep.
That's not learning cause and effect. You can learn cause and effect without being fearful of touching a hot stove.
Well, the one thing, I mean, you will learn it. Yeah, there's different ways of learning, but one of the ways you can learn, and most kids do learn this way, is that they need to experiment and they need to say, oh, what is this thing? Oh, it's hot. Well, I keep getting told it's really hot and I shouldn't touch it. Why shouldn't I touch it? Psst, that's why. Because
can I ask a question? Earlier, when you first started talking about it, you said that you don't think it's abuse, but you also said that you don't think that it's something that should be used, or at least like not right away or not often. Can you explain to me why you don't think that spanking is, if it's not abuse, why you think it's okay? It shouldn't be okay to use like right off the bat, or like it shouldn't be always used?
Well, I mean, two things can be true at the same time. Like it can be a way for kids to learn, but I do believe that there's mitigation methods that can be used prior to abuse, be used prior to the spanking. So
I understand, but why do you view spanking as like the last resort kind of thing, and not one of those pieces of abuse, or not abuse? Sorry, we're all doing it. One of those things, those ways of discipline discipline beforehand? Why do you view it? Because to me, it sounds like you view it as kind of like the last thing you would do or close to the last thing you would do, not the first thing. Why can't you use it as the first tool? What about it is something that you wouldn't agree with using it right away?
Well, because I still believe in like treating. I mean, you treat kids as human beings in the same way that like if someone came up to me and was like was instigating me into a fight, I will try and diffuse the situation verbally and then in a humane manner. Now, if I get pushed to a point that I need to like to defend myself in a physical manner, then I will. And the same opportunity I give to children is saying, hey, like this is, we can talk about this and this is inappropriate and you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't be hitting your brother.
You're not treating them the same way because
why not?
We're not talking about if some like I wouldn't assume that your child is just constantly trying to get into physical altercations with you. So let's use something more synonymous. Let's say that somebody was doing something that you didn't agree with. Okay, if you continue to ask them not to do that thing, and they kept doing it anyway, would you then resort to spanking them?
I mean, it depends on how you're viewing the spanking. Like a spanking could just like for me, it's just like a hard slap across the bottom, right? Like it's just a quick like bang.
So you would do that to an adult?
No, I'd probably not.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is you're not treating them like people. You're treating them as more like property. Because like you wouldn't do that to an adult. You know you wouldn't do that to an adult. So if you wanted to treat them like an individual, like a human, then you should treat them like you do other humans.
It's pretty reductionist to say I treat my kid like property. That's not what I'm doing. I mean, I have a very just like I mean, like most parents, there's a very tight bond and a very complicated bond between, you know, parents and their kids. Like it's not as simple and binary as
So the closer the bond, the more freedom you have for abuse.
No, but I do care about how my kids will eventually grow up. Again, it's not spanking is not something that. What's that?
Do you?
Do I what?
Do you care about how they will be when they grow up?
Of course. Of course.
Okay, so what are the long-term benefits of spanking?
I think that again, I think it's a tool to learn the consequences for your actions if you don't listen to people of authority. There's people who understand the rules and understand how you need to conduct yourself. And again, it doesn't mean like both things can be true. The spanking isn't necessarily the best option, but it is a way for kids to understand, wow, if I act this way, you know, something will happen. Extreme will happen.
Why is it not the best? Why is it not the best option?
Well, again, because I do believe that you can talk to kids first, you know, but I don't believe it's abuse.
No. But you're saying you believe you talk to kids first, but you're saying it's not the best option. But talking to kids first isn't a reason that it's not the best option. Why do you view spanking as worse than talking? Right? Why is spanking worse than talking?
Well, because I'll avoid physical, you know, altercations. I'll avoid hitting when I can. Because but what I'm trying to like delineate against is that it is hitting, but it's not abuse. Like you're saying it's abuse, and I don't think it's abuse.
Okay, I want to get back to where I was going for a bit here. So where have you researched the long-term benefits and the long-term negatives to spanking?
Well,
what research have you done?
So I guess I haven't done any, but I don't think it needs to be done in order to have a good good faith discussion over the topic.
You said you're concerned. You said you're concerned about your children's future.
I am.
That they will be and the things that affect them later on.
Right, because
if you're going to do something as extreme as hitting your child, wouldn't you at least want to look into the long-term effects that can have if you're truly concerned about your children's future?
When that becomes the only method of teaching or disciplining them, then I will look more into it. But it's not, and because my relationship with my kids is extremely complex, then I don't need to because
you're
it's
still doing it.
What?
If you're using it at all, you need to understand the effects of it. I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, I have other methods, but you use this method sometimes, so you should understand how it's impacting your children.
Occasionally, very, very rarely, but I do believe it's effective when it needs to be.
It does. Again, even if you use it occasionally, you're still using it. And so I think you should, if you care about being a good parent, which I believe that you do, I truly do believe that you care about being a good parent. And if you do, then you should understand the impact that this has. Because if you were to let's all talk about spanking. Let's make up like a random thing. Let's just say that somebody like you are gonna discipline your kids by um making them wear a pink shirt. Okay, let's just say that you have to wear a pink shirt as discipline. Wouldn't you want to like understand if that's actually going to have the effect that you think it's going to have or not before you do it? Like, wouldn't you want to research and be like, is this having a good impact on my kids or not?
Well, in this particular instance, anecdotal evidence is fine because I didn't turn out to be a psychopath maniac.
No. So it's not, because we can see that even if you're not like, if you're not me, so if you're not unaliving people as an adult, that doesn't mean that you turned out completely fine and that you don't exhibit trauma based on abuse in ways that you don't even realize you're doing it, right? You are not aware of the ways in which you may be that trauma may be manifesting itself into your life later on from the abuse that you experienced as a kid, right? And there are plenty of people who would say I was spanked and it did traumatize me. And so if there are people who give anecdotes that say that it does traumatize them, and then you're saying that it doesn't, then who do we believe? What we should believe is the sources and the studies and the statistics, because that's going to give us a better understanding rather than listening to anecdotes and trying to decide whose anecdote is right.
Right. So statistically, there are people who get traumatized by walking outside their front door. But we don't operate in a fairy tale land where we have to.
Oh my God!
So this is vastly different, right? Because we have a lot of studies that show that there's literally no positive impacts of spanking, and that they are all negative. Right?
Do you guys have just one source you can share with me so I can look it up too? Thank you.
Yeah. So I can give you one that it's more of like an article, but I can also give you like some like studies as well. But there's an article by this. I love using this source because somebody who was an op gave it to me, thinking it was helping him. But there's a Scientific American article called "What Science Says and Doesn't About Spanking." That's what it's titled. And it talks about a meta-analysis that was done by researchers at the University of Texas at Austin and University of Michigan. They evaluated 75 published studies on the relationship between spanking by parents and various behavioral, emotional, cognitive, and physical outcomes among their kids. They found that spanking was associated with 13 out of a total of 17 negative outcomes that they assessed, including increased aggression and behavioral and mental health problems, as well as reduced cognitive ability and self-esteem. And then that's the one I just have offhand, but I've started keeping studies on a document on my computer that I can pull up if you would like me to. I also think there are other people in this live that can give you sources as well.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm always interested in learning about it. Did you say there were 17 negative studies? Is that what there was?
So there were 75 studies that they did a meta-analysis on, which just means they reviewed all of these studies, and there were 17 negative outcomes they were assessing. So they were assessing a bunch of people who had been spanked or kids who had been spanked, and assessing 17 negative outcomes that had to do with like behavioral health and stuff like that. And they looked through those. Out of those 17, spanking had contributed to 13 of those 17 negative outcomes for children being spanked.
So out of the 75 studies, there was 13 negative outcomes out of entire studies?
No. So there weren't 13 studies that were negative. It's out of those 75 studies, they took all of the data from 75 studies to look at 17 outcomes through all of those 75 studies. So they were only assessing 17 outcomes, but for all 75 of those studies. And 13 of those 17 negative outcomes were directly correlated with being spanked.
Gotcha. Seems like a small sample size. I guess is my point.
It's not. 75 studies is not a small sample size.
But when you just look at
17 children. No, it's not 17 children. It's 17 different outcomes. I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. So it's not like they looked at, so the sample size wouldn't be the outcomes they were assessing. The outcomes that they were assessing are the things they chose to look at. Like, let me read.
What is the negative outcome considered, I guess, would be my question.
So the ones that they include, some of the ones they included were increased aggression and behavioral and mental health problems, as well as reduced cognitive ability and self-esteem. So the people doing this meta-analysis, these researchers were looking through 75 published studies on the relationship between spanking by parents and these various behavioral issues. And they decided to pick 17 negative outcomes that they could look at because they felt like that was like, okay, let's look at all the negative outcomes. Obviously, there's millions of those probably at this point. So let's look at like the main negative outcomes, which have to do with like increased aggression, self-esteem issues, cognitive ability, etc. And they looked through 75 studies and looked at all of the results. And out of those 17 outcomes, negative outcomes that they looked at that happen in kids, 13 of those were directly correlated with being spanked. So that means that all of the kids in all of those 75 studies, I don't even know how many kids, but there was a huge sample size. Out of those 75 studies, the data in that shows that 13 of the 17 negative outcomes they saw in those kids were directly correlated with those kids having been spanked, which means that the spanking most likely caused those outcomes.
Right. But also, there is a possibility that so they were spanked. It doesn't necessarily, so like, I mean, trauma like that and negative outcomes could be a result of anything. That they just happen to be a part of it. I'm not saying it's not important studies, for sure.
Now, so what you're telling me right now is that you're finding a way to try to basically discredit the source. But what I'm telling you is that this meta-analysis covers 75 studies, and each study had its own sample size.
Right.
So it's a really, really big analysis to determine whether the spanking. So what we can do when we look at a really big sample size is we can account for things like other trauma, right? We can control for things like other trauma and for disparities within race and disparities within gender and stuff, because we do see that those can have different impacts too, based on society and how parents treat you differently based on your race, your gender, etc. And we can control for those in studies, especially with bigger sample sizes, which is why a meta-analysis of a bunch of studies is really helpful, because it kind of can help take out those kinds of what I would call error, essentially. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that there are some people that go through trauma related to being spanked as a child?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. I wasn't saying otherwise, but I was interrupted. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No. So I think that's all we really need to get down to, is that there are people that are traumatized from being spanked as a child. So how do we ensure that people aren't traumatized from being spanked as a child?
Because the act of, I just think.
No. How do we prevent that?
Minimize it.
Why don't we just eliminate it?
Yeah.
Why do we minimize it?
Because you're not going to eliminate anything.
So even minimizing it, there are people who are literally hit one time by a parent and have trauma from it. So even
there's got to be way more
does not prevent the trauma.
Well, would they get hit with a brick, a bat, a hand?
To remove the behavior.
I mean, we're also not accounting.
I don't know. No, hold on, stop.
Yeah.
I don't know why you think it's funny to hit a child.
I don't think it's funny at all. I think it's the most disturbing,
You're
abhorrent.
Laughing. You're talking about hitting a child with a bat and laughing.
What I'm laughing at is that you.
Funny.
What I'm laughing at is that.
Disturbing and abhorrent, but you're justifying it, validating it.
No, because I don't agree that spanking is abuse. You're talking about hitting a child.
You're talking hitting a child.
No. Now we're going to do the mental gymnastics. Let's all stretch before we all pull a muscle.
No, you literally talked about hitting a child with a bat and then giggled like it's a joke.
Okay, now, all right.
What the fuck?
Okay, listen to me. Listen for a second. I know it's really easy when someone says something like that. It's easy to fixate on the actual words and not understand what I'm saying. I understand that.
I understand what you're saying.
Listen, there's and this is another question I would have about these studies that we just went through, these 75 studies. To what degree, again, like degree matters in this thing. Like what kind of abuse were these kids experiencing? Was it just a spanking? Was it just a
Artemis would like to speak. Artemis would like to speak, please.
Hi. So I have a great source here pulled up. It's from Child Development, Volume 93, Issue 1. This was published in January of 2022. It's from the Society for Research in Childhood Development, and it talks about the impacts of how spanking on social emotional learning, which is extremely instrumental in creating a foundation for children to be successful in life. And I'd like to read just a small paragraph right here, which is citing another source talking about what we've learned through research and through testing, the implications of what spanking does to the brain specifically. So nascent evidence is consistent with these ideas, as children who were spanked in their first years of life exhibited greater activation in multiple circuits of the MPFC in response to stimuli that suggest the presence of environmental threat relative to children who were not spanked. That's from Curataris. It's a source from 2021. These findings also support the predictions from the social learning, social information, and attachment perspectives by indicating that children who are spanked might devote greater additional resources to processing threats in the environment, having more difficulties engaging in effortful attempts to regulate emotional responses and regulating their behavior, and find it more challenging to resolve conflicts relative to children who are not spanked. So when we look at the studies, when we look at what happens to children who are spanked, we see only negative effects. We see children having a harder time regulating their emotions. We see children having a harder time resolving conflict. And we see children perceiving things as threats that they shouldn't have to perceive as a threat due to the fact that their hypervigilance is constantly up because they do not know what action might result in violence.
Right. So the beginning of that, you said it was a study on for spanking children less than 1 year old. Like, did I hear that right?
No.
Okay, reread that part then.
They started. Hold on.
Yeah.
They started measuring from the experience spanking within their first year of life. So they started measurement from there and continued forward.
Could you just read that first part again that mentions the one, because I'm really interested, because how you paraphrase it doesn't sound how I heard it. I just want to hear it again, if that's okay.
So also the Harvard study does talk about this as well. So the nascent evidence is consistent with these ideas of children who were spanked in their first years of life. First years.
I didn't hear the years. Okay.
Exhibited greater activation in multiple circuits of the MPFC in response to stimuli that suggest the presence of environmental threat relative to children who were not spanked.
Okay.
Could I ask you a question, Shagsworth? Like, so we're presenting these studies to you, and I know that you have some questions about them, and I totally understand that, right? And I think I would encourage you to like look these up yourself. That's what I was doing.
Already writing it down.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah.
I pull studies up, even if it's something like I disagree with, I always pull it up and see, like, let me read it. Let me see what it really says, for myself.
Yeah.
But I would like to, if we're presenting you with this information, we're telling you that we've done our research and we've seen these studies that all they tell us is over and over and over again that spanking has these negative outcomes. It's not good for kids, and it doesn't actually do what people think it does. And we really haven't found, none of us have found studies that say anything about positive outcomes. The only thing I've ever seen about spanking is that it will, if a child is like doing a behavior and you spank them while they're doing it, they will a lot of times stop doing that behavior in that moment. But that's the only quote unquote positive outcome. And I wouldn't even call that positive. It's achieving the immediate need that you have. But then otherwise, it's creating a lot of negative outcomes for that child and affecting like their literal brain. And it doesn't actually help in the long run is what we're seeing. And so even if you like don't want to like leave us today with like just like agreeing with us that it's abusive, now that you've heard these things, I just want to know, like, are you going to go ahead and look to see if you can find information about positive outcomes before you continue to like potentially use it as a technique? Because if all you're hearing from us is that it is abusive and it does result to negative outcomes, are you still okay with just going about it, assuming that even though these studies say otherwise?
Yeah, no, I definitely plan on looking more into it. I don't know if I necessarily need to find the positive outcomes in it, because again, what I find with parenting is that it's such a complex journey, and and until I adopt spanking as the only means of teaching a child lessons, there's so many things that go on when it comes to like punishment. And there are times when that I've had to use the spanking. It's not often, but again, I just don't categorize it as abuse is why I'm here. You say spanking is abuse. I just disagree with that. I don't think it needs to have a positive outcome to not be abuse. It doesn't have to be the best method for it to not be abuse. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I don't think it's abuse.
So just based on definitions, it is. So I can go over that with you if you would like. That when we look at the actual definitions of the words like abuse and spanking, and we look at examples and stuff like that, we can see that it is by definition abuse. Just so we're clear, it is abusive behavior by definition. But I don't think definitions are that important here. But the thing that gets me is that you said I don't think that I need to look for the positive outcomes, and I don't.
No, I am going to look for the positive outcomes. I am going to.
I know, but you said you don't think you need to, right? And you said that you don't think it necessarily has to have positive outcomes in order for it to not be abuse. And I agree with that. Just because something doesn't have a positive outcome doesn't mean that it's abuse. However, I do want to question why you would use a technique on your child if you didn't know that it was going to have any actual like meet your goal, right? Like if you're going to use this, unless your only goal is to make your child stop the immediate action right then and there, and you don't have any goals for like them learning how to like be a decent human being or learning how to not do bad behaviors in the future, and you also aren't worried about the negative impacts it could have on them, then sure, I could see you wanting to do that as a parent. But otherwise, why would you want to continue to potentially keep this in your toolbox of disciplinary actions if you don't have any evidence that it's actually going to have the effect that it should be having?
Well, I mean, there's so many things that, I mean, there's just no guarantee of anything in the world. Like we can sort of maximize or minimize negative, positive outcomes, but there's no real surefire way, especially with parenting, that any one thing will work. I mean, everything's different for kids.
Sure. So why don't you punch your kid in the face when they act up?
Never advocated for punching a kid in the face. Moving along.
Why?
I don't even need to explain why not.
Right? Why don't you?
Yes, because actually,
no, you should, because
actually physically harming or injuring someone is wrong, and you're not doing that with a spanking.
Yeah, so hitting your kid is physically harming them.
No, it's not. Do you leave marks on your kid when you spank them?
Yes, it is.
No, then you're.
So first of all, you said hit hard earlier, by the way, but also, I'm sorry, but
I don't
it's hitting by definition, and it is causing harm. Leaving a mark on somebody you don't have to leave a mark for something to cause harm. Just to be clear, it is causing harm, right? You can hit somebody and it can hurt and it can make them fear you and make them feel pain without it leaving a mark. That's still causing harm.
Yeah, if not to cause pain, then what is the purpose of hitting?
Yeah.
I think you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, but you're intentionally skirting what I'm saying.
No, because you don't want to acknowledge that there's not
because small amounts of pain don't just result in trauma. Like you guys probably, of all people, should know how complex these things are. I don't know why that I need to keep explaining every minute detail. Like you're adults, you know you know exactly what I'm saying.
Here's what you're not understanding. There are people, there are people that go through life and get abused by the people that are supposed to love them.
Right, those people should be locked up.
Trauma from that.
Yeah.
And a lot. I'm sorry, what?
Continue.
No, what did you say?
I said, yes, those people should be locked up. Continue. What you're saying.
Do you realize that you're one of the people advocating for that?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so why should a person who is supposed to love a child harm them?
I think you know exactly what I mean when I say spank my child. I'm not talking about winding up and with a closed fist.
Are you going, I think you know what we mean? Are you going, I think you know what I mean? I think you know what I mean. Why don't you answer the question instead of saying, I think
because
you know what I mean?
Because this is not what I'm talking about. People who leave marks on children and use hitting as the only way to discipline their children, they are awful people. They're awful people.
If I punch a child, as long as I don't leave a mark, it's fine. What if I hit them across the face with an open palm and I don't leave a mark?
What if you hit your children across the face open palm?
Yeah, if I slap my kid with an open palm, just like if I was going to hit them on the butt, but instead I do it on their face and I don't leave a mark. Is that wrong?
I mean, yeah, I mean it's borderline. I mean, but it's probably.
Why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? Sorry, go ahead.
I mean,
do you have a son? Do you have a son or a daughter?
I have 2 boys.
Okay, so if somebody came up to one of your boys and hit them, but they didn't leave a mark, would that be okay?
No, and you know why? Because that's not their child, first of all. But they're.
Also, you can hit your about. This is why we talked about property earlier, because you're treating your children like, instead of like individual human beings.
Well, first of all,
property,
if it's another kid, my kid has permission to hit that child back, because you don't fuck with my kids.
So
first
should
of
they
all,
hit you back?
So if it's an adult that hits your child and doesn't leave a mark, is that okay?
Yeah, no, they will likely be taking a trip to the dentist.
Okay, so you are now justifying hitting your own child if you don't leave a mark, but if somebody else does it, you're not. So explain.
No, because there's a reason.
Hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Hold
go ahead.
on.
Yeah.
Explain to me why it's okay for you to hit your child when you're supposed to be the person that cares about them the most and protects them.
Right.
Why it's okay for you to hit your child, but not anybody else.
Because there's a lesson to be learned behind it. It's not out of anger. It's not out of malice.
Right. So if I hit your child to teach him a lesson, that's okay.
No.
Because here's the problem. The only way that you would justify this is by saying, no, it's okay for me to hit my own child, but not anybody else. I don't know if that's a power thing, if that just makes you feel good about yourself, but that is the only differentiation that you can make here that would be consistent with your argument.
No, I don't think so. I think that no.
Okay, so then make another one, because the last one wasn't. Because you said if you're teaching them a lesson, it's acceptable. But yet if I said I was teaching them a lesson by hitting your child, you said that wouldn't be acceptable. So that's not a differentiation. So give me one then that's consistent with your argument.
I don't think I need to. I'm telling you that
oh my God. You have not even been engaging in this conversation. Your whole thing since you've been here has been, I think you know what I mean. I don't think I need to explain anything.
Because I think you're intentionally misrepresenting what I'm saying.
Yet you can't, because you're not saying anything. You're just sitting up here. You're not answering the questions. You're not explaining your perspective. You're not giving me the actual reason why it's okay for you to hit your child, but not anybody else. Like, so if you don't want me to,
because you're pretending,
you haven't been doing that.
You are pretending that spanking is the only method in which I discipline my kids. You're pretending that this is all inside of a vacuum. It's not what's happening.
I don't care if you use 120 methods to discipline your kids. That's not the point here. The point is that you should not be laying your hands on anyone, especially a minor that you're supposed to care about more than anyone else. Because the only thing that you are teaching them is that violence is acceptable, that it's okay for people who care about you to abuse them, and that, like, no matter what, they're not actually going to learn anything from spanking other than fear.
I fucking lost my train of thought. Sorry. Oh, damn it. I had it in my head. Oh.
Okay, so I want to demonstrate to you why we're talking about spanking, and because you keep going back to this, like, oh, we keep focusing on it like it's the only thing you're doing. No, we recognize you've told us that it's not the only thing you're doing, but you're still doing it. So, for example, if I was in a relationship, and like most of the time when I'm mad at my significant other, I talk to them about it.
Yep.
But occasionally when I'm mad at my significant other, if I've already talked to them about this thing before, then I cut off one of their fingers. Okay, just to be dramatic about it, right? And then you tell me that I need to not cut off my significant other's fingers when I'm mad at them. And I go, well, but sometimes I talk to them. You're acting like the only thing I ever do is cut off their fingers, right? No, we're not, right? We understand that sometimes I talk to them, but that doesn't negate the fact that I'm cutting off their fingers occasionally, right? That's the problem, which is why we're focusing on that, not the other things. It's the same thing here with spanking. We're focusing on spanking because, one, that's the topic, and two, that's the thing that we view as abuse. We're not talking about those other things because that's not the topic and that's not what we view as abuse. So we're not ignoring that you do other things, but you are still doing the thing that's a problem.
Do you think that cutting off someone's finger is maybe just a little bit different of an example? Like, they're not even.
God,
it's disanalogous. It's disanalogous.
It wasn't meant to be analogous. That wasn't the point.
It wasn't supposed to be analogous.
So what was it supposed to be then?
I wasn't making the analogy between spanking and cutting fingers off. I was making the analogy between you doing other things but also doing something that's wrong, and me doing other things but also doing something wrong. That's what the analogy was. It had nothing to do with cutting off fingers. Okay, let's fucking use spanking then, if you want to be like that, right? Okay, so every time my mom does something wrong, most of the time I talk to her about it. But if I've talked to her about it before and she keeps doing it, then I spank my mom. Okay? If I talk to you about that, you'd probably be like, hey, like, you should probably not spank your mom if she's not doing something you like, right? So but then I go, yeah, but sometimes when she's not doing something I like, I talk to her about it, and you're not even acknowledging that. That's what you're doing, right? You're sitting here and pretending that because you do other things, somehow it negates the fact that you spank your kids. We are talking about the part that's problematic. Spanking my mom would be problematic. Spanking your kids is problematic. We're not talking about the times when I talk to my kid. I'm not ignoring the fact that you talk to your kids sometimes about things or use other discipline, timeout, whatever, right, which we could discuss that too, but that's not the topic. What we are focusing on is the part that's problematic. It's not negating the fact that there's other things you do, and doing those other things doesn't negate the fact that you are spanking your kids. So please stop coming at us for not talking about the fact that you occasionally communicate with them too. That's not the part.
You're welcome to think that it's not the best method to discipline my kids. You're welcome to you're welcome to think it's wrong.
Oh my fucking God.
Are you okay?
You haven't brought in a single. No, I'm not, because this is fucking insufferable. You haven't gave us a single reason.
Then don't do these lives, homie. If you don't want to hear what other people have to say, don't do these lives. Are you kidding?
You haven't said anything.
I've said plenty about how I think that this is.
You just sat up here and said, no. You just sat up here and said, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean. You know this, you know that, but you haven't answered a single question yet to this point. I've been asking you what are the benefits of spanking, and I still have not gotten any.
Here's a benefit. Here's a benefit of spanking is that when my child grows up, he's going to understand that there's consequences for his act. If he acts out, I'm not going to continue to spank my child, and I hardly do anyway, but I won't continue to. But now he understands that if he gets pushed far enough, that there's going to be consequences. And I don't want the world to teach my kid in a much more unapologetic manner. That is what. Oh my God. That is a positive.
All right. Okay. So is spanking the only consequence to your actions in the real world when you're an adult?
No, spanking is a much more lenient version of what could be dished out to you.
No, abuse is not lenient. So why is it then that is the only way that you can teach consequences?
It's not
by abusing your child.
It's not.
Great. So then let's not use that as a benefit. Then,
I will minimize it.
There are much better ways.
Sure.
There are much better ways to teach consequences than abuse.
Okay, then implement them as much as you want. It's not abuse, though. Spanking is not abuse. A rap across the ass is not the same as physically abusing your child. Like, there's plenty of examples of kids like going to the hospital because that's all the parents know. They'll close fist them. They'll lock them in rooms. There was a lady, I don't know, like 6 hours south of where I live, who was like locking their kids in the basement and like duct taping them. That's abuse, man. That's not a spanking. Yeah. That's not even the same, even in the same ballpark. Even you and I can agree on that.
Abuse can be arranged. Abuse can be arranged, if it's okay, Nate. So abuse can be arranged. You're thinking of the extreme cases of abuse, which are just as valid as minor cases of abuse are. For instance, you can be hit with child abandonment if you forget to pick up your child at a daycare for a couple of hours and CPS gets involved. Like there are many levels to which we label abuse and we recognize it and we address it.
Yeah.
My issue is that if there was actual, like, I follow the evidence, and if there was positive outcomes, if there were things that I could see, I could view, I could look at from not my perspective and not my parents, but an empirically based data to which we've run tests, we've looked into this, and also listening to people who work in childhood development, that work in early childhood development, that this is their job, this is what they study, this is what they do. If they were all saying that spanking was positive and had great outcomes, then I would be on board, because if it was the best form of discipline, then obviously we should be doing it. But it's simply not the case, as no one is stating that this is a good form of discipline. In fact, we're seeing nothing but harmful outcomes. And this is worldwide. This isn't just the United States. These are studies that are done worldwide on many different subsets of children, many different age ranges, and many different forms of corporal punishment. Whether this be a small, spanking to the butt, to very hard forms of spanking on the butt. But my issue comes to this is we talked about marks earlier. The thing is that there are children that bruise easily. So how do you, and this is where it is that we don't know where the line is, because abuse for me doesn't really have a line. Like, is it, if you leave a mark, it's abuse. Okay, but what if the child bruises easily? Is that abuse because they bruise easily? Or do we just need to like lightly tap them? Like, where's that line? It's different for every child. Okay. Well, like, how do we know when that spanking becomes abuse? You know, oh, well, it's when it moves past the bottom. Well, okay, well, what if it's to the thigh? Does that count as abuse? Like, this is where it gets issues. We start getting into the nitty gritty of it. At the end of the day, you're still hitting a child. You're hitting, and the child isn't going to learn anything but pain. If a child steals something from the store, the best way to teach that child that stealing is wrong is not only make sure that you go back to the store and make them either work to pay what they stole for, and you teach them the value of $1, and you teach them that stealing is wrong, or you could spank them and go, don't steal, that's horrible, you can't do it, it's against the law, and walk away. I don't see people instilling the actual lesson of why it is wrong. I see them instilling pain and fear and then going, don't do that because this is because I told you so. You shouldn't steal because it goes against societal expectations, not because your mom and dad said it was bad. Like, I don't see people actually instilling the adequate lessons that are going to help these children thrive.
You will never see that.
My issue is that I don't see children learning these fundamental lessons. I've seen children who we know are getting corporal punishment behave worse than children that are talked to. Social emotional learning is pivotal within not only the education system, but at home as well. If these things are not implemented, children do not grow up in an enriched environment. They don't have a great foundation, and they're in shaky ground. There are many things we look at, including low-income areas, areas where children, parents work both full-time jobs and don't have as much time. Like, there's so many things that come into these studies and what we look at that to me, it feels like that you just don't want to consider the possibility that something you don't think of as abuse could fall under abuse in many different facets.
Yeah. I agree with some of what you said, and I guess disagree with some. I think one of the major points that I'm trying to make is I don't hit my kids with malice. I don't hit my kids with the intent of harming. It's why, again, like there may be a spanking, but usually almost immediately following, what will happen is I get down to my child's level and I talk to them, and we walk through what happened, because the relationship I have with them is obviously very important, but it's also important that they understand why everything just took place. I don't hit them, throw them in their room, and then walk away. Like, that's not how it goes. And that might be how some people do it.
Can I say one thing? One thing real quick. So here's something I have found really fascinating. When you ask adults who say they were spanked, first of all, they're not affected by it, which that's fine. You don't have to be affected by everything for it to still be like, there are people who were, at your level of extreme abuse and they're not affected by it.
My level of extreme abuse? Excuse me?
No. What you were talking about, where you're talking about people being duct taped in basements and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about extreme abuse examples.
Right.
Like I said, abuse can be multi-leveled.
Yeah.
So, but what I find interesting is that no one ever can cite the lesson that was spoken to them. They remember the spanking, they remember what it was for, but the lesson that was instilled in them never repeated, not one time. I never hear what they actually learned from it. They go, well, I stole from my sister, I got spanked, I never did it again. Cool. What was the lesson that was instilled in you about why it was wrong to steal from your sister?
Don't steal was the lesson.
Why is it wrong to take from your sister? No. Hold on. No. Why is it wrong to steal from your sister?
Because it's not your property.
What else?
Because stealing's wrong. That's it. Stealing's wrong.
Why is stealing
Especially
wrong?
stealing from your family.
Why is stealing wrong? Why is it wrong, though?
Because it's not your property. You don't own it. You can't just take it without...
But I don't understand, but you mean like it's not your property. Like, I'm 5, and I've taken like my sister's like Halloween candy.
Oh, you want me to explain it as if you're a 5-year-old? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I would want you to instill this lesson into me.
I don't know if I can, because you're not a 5-year-old.
Trust me, I can sit here and listen.
Oh, okay. I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to trap me to say like, oh, you can't know that lesson's actually being instilled.
I see. I'm literally asking you to demonstrate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, what I would say to my child is, it was that this was your sister's toy. This is hers. Yes, we do share, but she didn't want to share it. This is hers. You can't just go in and take that. You can't take my things. Like I don't know. Okay. Like on the fly, I wouldn't know. Like I can't exactly explain it. But usually, my wife and I, when these things happen, we will talk about it before, and then again, it happens almost right away where we talk about, this is your property, this is her property, or we might not use the word property. We might say like, this is her toy, or this is her shirt.
Right. So here's the problem. You're having a hard time explaining that as it is. So how is a child of that age supposed to understand that just from being spanked?
Because again, you didn't hear what I said. I talk with my wife about it ahead of time. This all takes place in a matter of like 15, 20 minutes, because usually like a timeout period or whatever. And my wife and I talk about it, and then one of us will approach him.
Didn't you just say you didn't do that?
No, I just said I talked with my wife about what happened, and we speak with our sons immediately after if there's a spanking. Honestly, any type of like timeout, if there's a spanking.
You're contradicting yourself.
No, I'm not.
Because at first you said you spanked your child and then immediately talked to them.
Yes.
Now you're saying you spanked them and then put them in timeout for 15 minutes and then talk to them.
Holy shit. Okay. I don't want to get into the semantics of it, of what immediately means, but within 20 minutes,
you're contradicting yourself.
Within 20 minutes, it's not a contradiction. Within 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, it's all fresh in everyone's mind. That's what I mean by immediately.
No, because initially you said that you did not put them in timeout at all. You immediately
I didn't say that.
Spanked them and then immediately talked to them.
If I said that, then I misspoke. But I don't know. Okay. If I said that, I misspoke. Okay, but that's how it goes.
Not trying to be gaslit here, and I'm trying to understand. So
it's not gaslighting.
Why
brother.
is it then that you need to have a discussion with them?
So they understand how we got to the point we're at. I don't see how that's a contentious point.
Yeah. So what are you teaching them by the spanking part?
Well, I'm also explaining to them why they got spanked, because
I understand that.
Yeah.
I do. I think that you should be speaking to the child.
Yeah.
But what are they learning from the spanking part specifically? Not from you having a conversation. What is spanking teaching them?
That that they need to stop before they get to the point that they were previously at. So they pushed it to
Okay, and how are they learning that from spanking rather than the discussion?
Because now they know,
afterwards?
oh my gosh, this like woo, like I wasn't expecting that. But then speaking afterwards, this is what's happened. I don't want to do this again.
So
period.
So if that was the case, then you wouldn't need to speak to them afterward. You could just spank them and they would learn that and never do it again.
No,
right?
again, because all of this stuff matters. If all you're doing is hitting your child, yes, you're doing it wrong. Spanking is not abuse, because it comes with all this other.
God, we're deflecting again.
No, it's not.
We're deflecting.
That was an answer to your question.
Can you please tell me if spanking teaches them not to do it again? Then why can you not just spank them and not talk to them afterwards?
I suppose I could, but I choose not to. Yeah, I suppose I could.
Why?
Because I mean, because of the shock and awe of it, really.
Thank you, Caroline. The shock and awe. What the fuck? Where is that in parenting books? Where do you see shock and awe in parenting books?
Does it need to be in a parenting book? Is that where you get all your advice? Is from a fucking book, brother? Parenting. You just read parenting books? Is that what I have to do? I have to read a parenting book?
I think you should. Yeah, if you think shock and awe is a form of parenting, then yeah, I think you should read some books.
No, I don't think it's a form of parenting. I think it's something that happens to teach a lesson.
What?
Just think of the harshest lessons that we learn as humans. It's generally comes at a point where we've been shocked and awe, like, oh my God, like I like, if I don't pay attention, I'm going to get hit by a foul ball. It's one of the earliest lessons I learned in baseball. If I don't pay attention to what's at home plate, I'm going to learn a really hard lesson going about 90 miles an hour.
Oh my God. So why is it then that we are educated every single day and yet we don't spank adults?
I don't know how to fully articulate that. I mean,
because like if we could just spank people and they would learn better and they would learn more efficiently, then why would we not just spank everyone as they go into school?
People do learn really quickly when you get into physical altercations.
They could learn that information a lot more efficiently, right?
We do listen. When people get into physical altercations, they learn really quickly who's the dominant person in that argument. So to say that it doesn't happen does happen.
Can you please stop deflecting?
Do you spank? Do you have older kids or just younger kids?
What does that mean?
Like, okay, I guess I'll ask a simpler question. Do you plan on ever stopping spanking your kids, like at a certain age?
Yes, I'm not going to spank my kids up through high school.
Okay, so when do you think it's like, when do you think you would stop?
Like at what age? I don't know. Because I don't really, like I said, I don't use it a lot, so it's not like okay. I'm not like.
So why would you stop in high school?
Well, it'll probably be way before that.
But why?
I don't know, because it would just be time to stop, because by then I mean my goal is to not have to I mean, by then I hope I instill enough of those lessons and early where they're just making good decisions. And you know, at some point I have to let them sort of leave the nest and learn things on their own. Like at some point they have to let the world teach them.
So what you're saying is at that point you would view them as an individual rather than property.
Well,
because they didn't have the capability to fight back and report you for hitting them.
Who's this baritone? I wish you would read me a kid's book.
I'm like, read me a bedtime.
I lost my train of thought. What was the last question?
Lucky has that effect.
Why then? So you haven't given us a reason why you would stop at a certain age. So I said it most likely would have something to do with the fact that you would see them as an individual rather than property, or some other people had mentioned it could be because they have the ability to fight back.
I don't think of my kids as
other
property.
Than that, what? Okay, then give me the reason why. Give me the reason why it's acceptable to hit a child when they are younger, a minor when they're younger, but not you can't hit a minor when they're older. Explain that to me.
Well, at some point, I'm going to have to let my children let the world teach them the lessons they need. I will do what I can to mitigate that up into a certain point, but once they start showing that they want,
everyone else should spank them at that point.
Because if I try and solve all their problems for them, it's not going to teach them how to be autonomous. I do what I can now, so they learn the what they need to learn.
Hold on. Please answer this then. Is it acceptable then for other people to teach them to spank them to teach them lessons?
No, I already answered that question. No.
Okay. So then why is it that spanking is such a great form of educating?
Didn't say it was such a great form. You said
it. Receptive.
You said it was a great form, not me.
No, that's the claim you made. You said that you can learn better from a traumatic event or from shock and awe. That like when you have an event that you learned a valuable lesson, it was through shock and awe. So therefore, the best way to teach is through shock and awe. So if you truly believe that, wouldn't you want other people to teach your children with shock and awe or spanking?
No, it's not their child. My child.
Right. So again, like you keep coming back to this, where like you try to make a justification for spanking itself, but then when I use that same justification that you use for yourself on anybody else, you say no because it's my child. When you say that, it sounds like you are using that as saying no, they are mine, they are my property, so I have the ability to do this. That's why nobody else can spank my child, because my child is not theirs; it is mine.
Okay, so how about I come? How about I come over? How about I come over for Thanksgiving and I start imposing my rules on your kids, and we'll see how long you like it. I'm not going to hit them, but I'm going to discipline them verbally. I'm going to pull them aside every time they do something that I disagree with. Is that okay?
No, I wouldn't even let you speak to my children because
no. We're in a hypothetical. Remember.
To be clear, I would let other adults, I would let other adults, like if my kid was acting up and needed like time in or something, I would allow other adults to do that with my kid.
Even if you didn't agree with their rules?
That is not synonymous here, because that is not me telling your child what is right from wrong. What you said is that any teacher, anyone who is teaching your child, they should be able to use shock and awe to enhance the education.
No, people outside of me
you should also be able to use shock and awe to teach them anything, and that they will pick it up better.
Nope.
So you would be then justifying teachers in school to hit your child so that they can have a better education, correct?
Nope. teachers should be teaching my kid how to think, not what to think. That's where I stand on that. That's their job. Teach my kids how to think, and then teach them how to do basic math and English. And that's about as far as teachers need to go. You don't need to. Hang
on.
Oh my God! What?
How are kids going to think what language is if they're not taught what language is?
All right. Did you teach your child every bit of language they know? No, your children learned how to speak by watching you and listening to you. That's how they learned.
Yeah, I just said no. She did not learn every word from me. I did not learn every word from my parents. Right. I went to school and learned a fuck ton more words and how they were used in order to communicate properly as a fucking human being.
Yeah,
you don't need a teacher to teach you how to treat human beings with respect and decency.
Clearly you do if you think it's okay to hit a minor.
Actually, yes, you do. That's literally a part of the foundation of education.
No, it's the parents' job.
It's a part of every single lesson. It's a part of every single day in class.
Parents' job.
It's teaching respect. It's teaching sharing. It's teaching. Yes, we actually do teach this.
Yeah. My daughter is 5 years old. She's in her first year of school in kindergarten. Okay.
Cool. Yep.
Since school started, you're gonna talk, or can I say what I'm gonna say?
I'm not talking. I said okay.
Okay, cool. She's been in school for a month. This is the first month of school is what we're coming to the end of right now. Since the end of school, since the beginning of school, we have had 3 incidents. She has pulled a little girl's hair. She has pulled a young boy down by his backpack. She has thrown sand at a couple of kids on the playground.
Dang.
Each time we've had an incident like that, the teachers have come to me, told me what they have done as a corrective action, and then left it to me to figure out what the next corrective action is. I go home. I don't hit her. I bring her home to my partner. We have a conversation with her about this, like why it's bad. How would it feel if somebody did it to her? That she needs to apologize and understand that what she did was wrong. Each day that we've had one of those incidents, in that conversation can take 10 to 15 minutes.
Yep.
Literally all the time that it takes sometimes. She's gone to school the next day. We've made sure that she says that she knows she has to say, I'm sorry for exactly what to whichever student is with her. And when I pick her up, I ask her, have you made your apology? Did you apologize to that kid, to those kids, blah, 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 blah. She said, yes. And then I go ask her teacher, hey, did she make her apologies today? I think so, yeah. And there weren't any more incidents. And it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I still have years to make sure that these actions are not being repeated.
Yeah.
But the fact is, so far, we're a month in. We've corrected 1, 2, 3 separate actions. So now we're building up a pattern of that's not okay. That's not okay. That's not okay. And there's been no physical discipline. And there's been corrective actions by the teachers. Again, not physical discipline. So she's starting to understand hurting people is bad.
Yes.
I'm not going to do that.
Good. No arguments here. Sounds like you're handling it great.
Both me and the teachers teaching her these lessons.
Okay. Cool. I don't disagree with anything you said. And again, just like, you threw a couple things in there, which, you haven't gotten physical with her. And I definitely don't agree with people who, like, if something happens at school and they come home and then, like, that's not teaching them any lesson. Like, again, like, spanking can be used in the moment as something happens, as like, hey, this happened, now that happened. I'm not saying, like, I don't agree with the fact that if something happens in the morning and you don't see it 8 hours later, they come home and you spank them. No, you shouldn't do that, because you're not now the punishment is separate from what happened. But of course the teachers are going to they're going to instill things like that and issue punishments based on behavior that's, of course they should do that. I mean, it's been happening forever. That's fine. Like, I'm not saying that we should have some anarchy at school. Like, of course the kids need to learn. I'm not against that.
Yeah, I don't understand your argument at all. I don't understand like what even justification you're trying to make here. Like it just doesn't make sense, because every time I try to ask you for a justification or a reason why spanking should be acceptable, you give me a reason, and then I ask you if that applies to anyone other than you, and you say no. So I don't understand like what justification you're making other than viewing children as your property.
Children, I mean, it's not a popular opinion among your sorts, but children don't have bodily autonomy with the way you think they do. The kids need to learn, because we don't just allow kids to do whatever they want with their body. It can be very harmful to them. They don't understand the consequences involved with saying like,
I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt.
Harm you for you.
What is
what you're saying?
What do you mean by that?
I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that? You said that around our sorts, this is not a popular opinion. What do you mean by our sorts?
Well, I mean, this side of, I mean, teaching LGBTQ in schools and spanking is abuse. Like this side of, I mean, these debates are all over TikTok. So anyone having these debates will not agree with me and saying, what?
I think that people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community or think that we should teach LGBTQ plus in school, all of a sudden think that children should just get to go out in public and do whatever they want to their body at like 6 years old.
Well, no, but this is, but to make my argument, I mean, in this case, like, no, children aren't property, but they don't, I mean, they don't have, I mean, there's a reason that we have a legal adult age where we believe that now you're an adult and you can make decisions on your own.
The problem, again, this is what you're not understanding. Is you keep making these same arguments. You keep, well, not the same arguments, but you keep trying to make arguments and justifications, again, that only apply to you. So, like, before you give me one of your
do you think I'm the only person on this planet that believes this?
No, stop. Let me finish. They would only apply to you.
Huh.
So, can you think of one example where anybody else or one justification that would apply to anyone hitting your children, not just you?
Nope, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Okay, so if you can't then tell me why it's okay for you to hit your children, but nobody else, again, that is why I said it looks like that you view your children as your property, and that's why it's okay for you to hit your children, but nobody else. Because if you're going to make a justification as to why spanking is good or it has benefits, then that would need to apply to other people that would be teaching your children, whether it be teachers, whether it be other family members, whether it be whoever is teaching your child, that would also have to apply to them.
Why?
Because if you're making a claim that spanking is beneficial, and you're saying it's beneficial because it's shock and awe, and children learn with shock and awe, then it should be acceptable. In any area where children are learning, in any situation where children are learning, then that should be acceptable. But the only person that you will allow to spank your child is you, which means it's not an issue of whether spanking is beneficial or not, because you only see it as acceptable when you do it.
Because they're my children.
Teaching your child.
Because they're my children, that's why.
And that is the reason why you view your child as your property, and that you
it's a very reductionist way of looking at it.
Your child and your child's body that nobody else has.
It's a total.
It's acceptable for you to hit your child because they are your property and nobody else's. So you are allowed to decide what happens to their body, not them.
Yeah, and that completely ignores everything that I've said prior. Like, again, these situations don't exist in a vacuum. Everything comes with extremely complicated circumstances. My relationship with my children is very, yes, it does matter. It absolutely matters.
To a single
abuse regardless of the reason.
It's not abuse. That's your opinion. It's your opinion that it's abuse.
No, it's not. Do you want me to read the definitions? You
don't have to. I have it. I have it right here. It's fine.
Okay, pull up the definition. So the definition of spanking is hitting with an open hand on the butt, right? And so when you look at the definition of abuse, is cruelty or violence towards a person or an animal, right? And when you look up what
cruelty or violence, I do not hit my child out of malice. Have you listened to one thing?
Let me fucking
No, because you're wrong.
So violence is, when you look up examples of
I'm
violence,
not an abuser.
Hitting is one of the things listed as violence. And so when you look at violence as part of abuse, because that's the definition, and hitting is part of violence, by definition, hitting somebody, regardless of where you do it, is abuse. Those are definitions, and that's the point we're at. So no, I'm not wrong. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, you're absolutely wrong. Sorry. You're 100% wrong. I do not approach my kids with malice. I don't approach my kids with cruelty. It is 100% different. You just read the definitions, but you're absolutely wrong. You're willful.
The actual definitions. You just told me the definitions, but you're wrong. That's what you're saying. You just read me definitions, but you're wrong about the definitions that literally come from Oxford Languages.
You see what I'm saying? Like you sit here and you just want to justify you hitting your children when everybody else around you is telling you that it is not acceptable.
I don't
in any
care.
Other situation.
Everyone around me. Everyone around me. There's 4 of you people here.
Oh my God.
There's 4 of you here. Everyone around me. I got my own chat full of people calling you guys idiots.
Do you want to stop?
Really? Why are you You're calling us idiots all of a sudden? We didn't call you.
I'm done with that bullshit. These people, the mental gymnastics it takes for these people to like they don't understand what I'm saying. They do not understand a goddamn word that's being said. Not even close. There is 100% a difference. There's 100% a difference between me hitting another child because I don't like them and me spanking my kid. A slap on the butt is the definition of a spanking. And they're making that the exact same thing as what definition did they use? So my definition of abuse here is abuse refers to any action that intentionally harms or injures another person, including physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person. So I'm not doing any of that to my child, first of all. And it happens immediately. There's a big difference, again, between something happening at school, them coming home, and me beating them over it. That is wrong. In the moment, when my son takes something big and heavy and intentionally throws it at his brother, that deserves a spanking. Because guess what? If you're going to cause harm to someone else, you're going to see what that harm is. Now, I'm not going to do the exact same thing, but a spanking will get you to realize, oh, I don't like that. I won't do it again. Cruelty and malice, out of her definition, the cruelty and malice part, she just totally glances over. Because someone else abusing my child likely has cruelty and malice involved with it. And even if it didn't, that's not their child. They don't have any right to discipline my child. Not in any way. Don't tell my kid what to do. Especially not in front of me. At least have the respect to be like, hey, your son's, you just kind of hit my kid. What? Like, fuck, I'll go over there and I'll pull him away. I don't care. And kids absolutely need to learn these lessons prior to entering the real world. If I just let my kid do whatever he wants, hit your brother all you want. Guess what? First time they try that stuff with someone out in the real world, they're going to learn real quick. And guess what? The lesson they learn from me isn't going to be nearly as harmful. And they totally ignoring the fact that I'm saying hitting your kid as a method of discipline is the only thing is wrong. Having a complex relationship, an emotional connection with your child, like it is the most important thing you can do. How do you negate trauma? Be there for your kid. Make sure they understand that you are there for them and you love them. That's how you negate this trauma bullshit. You could have trauma from one incident. No shit. And again, are we talking about hitting a kid in the head with a bat, with a brick? Are we talking about flicking them in the head? Because there's all different. You're not going to leave a lasting mark on a kid by flicking them in the head. And if that is the case, if you did leave a traumatic event on your kid by flicking him in the head, the kid has much bigger issues to worry about than that. Sorry. That was exactly my point, Greg. I don't agree with spanking as a method of doing it. But is it abuse? No, it's not abuse. Not abuse. And we can absolutely differentiate. We can absolutely differentiate between like leaving marks on kids and not leaving marks on kids. Because here's the natural progression of it. People aren't smart enough to not leave marks. I mean, there's some. I'm happy to look up fucking statistics in this article. I would love to look at those studies that they were talking about. I think they said like Science America, what science says about spanking. I would love to look that stuff up. I probably will. Don't act like you don't treat your kid as if he's property. You let your kid just walk outside whenever he wants. Whoa, hey, whoa. What do you mean? Oh. Like, you actually, that fucking blue-haired retard does the exact same shit that all of us do. The exact same stuff that all of us do. Oh, he might not hit his kid. Well, that's that deep voice guy. Why's your daughter hitting people? Why's your daughter throwing people down by the backpack? Where's that learned behavior coming from? Mom or dad get a little angry with one another, hitting each other? I think most kids would rather get spanked than be institutionalized and a slave to the state. Yeah. That is the problem with people talking. Wait, what? That's the problem with people talking about modern abuse. Quite literal, everything is considered abuse. Right. This is the same group that says that like words are violence, silence is violence. It's all the same shit. And it's all like, speaking of contradictory, speaking of non-answers, these people don't realize that being too lenient can have the opposite effect. Like the girl who beats up her classmates probably doesn't get disciplined. Right. And that's the point. They can learn at home. These lessons because the world is going to be unapologetic in how it teaches them lessons, especially young boys. I mean, young girls too. It's not one or the other. And I don't, you know, the whole like, well, what's the net positive? Well, what's the positive for spanking? It doesn't need a positive. I would like people to minimize hands-on kids for sure. Absolutely. Is it an acceptable punishment? Yes. Beating your kids, on the other hand, is not okay because beating a kid is abuse. Spanking is not beating your kid. Teachers shouldn't have to deal with these situations. That's a modern thing. Right. And again, I don't even like my child, you know, he acts out occasionally at school. Like he doesn't like, he has a very hard time paying attention. He gets bored very easily. And he likes to play fight. You shouldn't ban a tool from the parenting tool belt just because you don't believe it personally. And that's where I'm at too. Closed spanking works. I think I know what you mean by that, but yes. I mean, and again, it's not just spanking. Like you might get a spanking, but like you're also going to get talked to as well. Like, and I think the most important thing is coming down to your kid's level. Like talking to them as a individual. They'll totally overlook that too. They probably couldn't. Oh my God! Whoa, he does what now? He talks to his kid and he spanks them. Oh my God! What an abuser! Yeah, Red. I worry about that because my son's pretty bright for his age. I mean, I hope it keeps up. Who knows? I'm pretty stupid. I hope it keeps up. What I've realized is like for my son, he needs his outlet that he likes. I'm really glad that as of right now, the teacher doesn't overload with homework, and it's usually pretty, it's stuff that he's good at doing and likes to do. And he sees the progress. And like one of the things we do is we'll positively reinforce his efforts. Like, so when he tries hard and he overcomes something, it's hey dude, really great job. Like you worked so hard on that. Like, and you overcame that. Like you were having so much trouble, but you did it. Like stuff like that, like reinforcing, you know? So the dumbass bloke kept detracting from the lady's point, but what's your response to the 100 studies they'll throw at you saying spanking doesn't work? Teachers used to hit kids' fingers with rulers. Right. Like, and again, like leaving marks on kids, that's wrong, man. Take him boxing or jujitsu to exert that extra. I know I should. Thing is, he's a gamer. My younger boy is the like outdoor ride bikes. But Slater, the older one, he likes to game. He's a gamer. So we're trying to find ways that he can have the creative outlet. He really likes to do Super Mario. Yeah. Less homework is great. Yeah. I've seen videos recently of people being like stop sending homework home. Like do your job. I don't need to be wasting my time with my kids while they do homework. Not only is it good, but he'll be a Giga Chad stud later in life. Yeah. My kids are pretty cool. They're all right. They're all right. I hate leaving lives like that. I'm so surprised they didn't kick me beforehand, but I was getting so mad. I shouldn't have dipped that way. I should have let them kick me, but I don't think that guy has any interest in like hearing what people have to say. Like I probably took as much of a neutral stance as I could when it comes to like spanking. It's not abuse, but we should minimize using it. Okay, what's contentious about that? Well, your kids aren't your property. They damn well are, because they don't have bodily autonomy. They are my property. They need me. They need me and my wife, not just me. They need us. People are retarded. I'll send you some videos. Yeah. Post them in Discord, please. Post them in Discord. The response is that correlation doesn't equal causation, and many of the behaviors considered problems are just a warrior mentality. Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, I got some work calling me. I got to let you guys go. It's been really fun. Thank you guys for watching as per usual. But I gotta head out. Thank you guys.